Today we are talking to Joe Campbell, Wednesday, March 23rd, 2011. And Joe, what is your full name?
Daniel Joseph Campbell.
Oh, okay. And why do you go by Joe?
Because my dad was Dan, my grandfather was Dan, my son's Dan, and so to keep us all apart, a couple of us chose to go by our middle names.
Oh, okay. I see. And would you mind telling us your birthday?
2/8/58.
I see.
February 8th.
So you just had your birthday recently.
Yes, I did.
Joe, where were you born?
I was born in St. Louis. My parents actually lived in St. Anne at the time I was born.
Oh.
And because when I came along, I was the third child in a small, very small 3-bedroom house in St. Anne. It was time to move. So at the time, Carrollton was just getting started, and they contracted with Fisher & Frickel to build them a home, and I guess it's Plat 2. It's the second phase of the development of Carrollton, and so they started having it. So I was about 10 months old when we moved into that house.
So was that 1958?
It was like December, 58.
And what street then was it?
Lived on DuPage, lived on the west side, so we were backed up originally to woods, but I distinctly remember, some memories of when Highway 270 all of a sudden became part of my backyard.
Oh, okay. All right. Now tell us then, so all you remember is growing up in Carrollton the whole time, your parents didn't move?
Lived here my entire life.
So what school did you go to for grade school?
Went to Carrollton Elementary School.
Yes?
Still can remember a lot of my teachers. Don't remember a lot of the kids I went to school with. And recently, a group of us got together on Facebook, and we're posting some of our old class pictures and trying to remember who all of our classmates were. And it was amazing. Between 2 or 3 of us, we could identify, close to 95-96% of the kids that were in that class.
Now, when you say in that class, was that grade school or was that high school?
Grade school. We were concentrating mainly on our 6th grade class.
So you went to Carrollton School from kindergarten through 6th grade, was it?
Through 6th grade.
And then where'd you go?
Holman.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I take it back. In 7th grade, we were actually on what is the site of the senior high now. Our class was a very large class. It was the first of 4 real large classes that Pattonville ever had. They didn't really have room for us in 7th grade. They had the new high school under construction. So we literally, we were in there the first year while it was being constructed. We were occupying the front half of the building as they were building backward.
So you went to 7th grade at the site of the present Pattonville High School on Creve Coeur Mill Road, is it?
Correct. And then we moved in 8th grade and 9th grade. We moved back over to what is now Holman Middle School.
And you were there for 8th and 9th grade?
8th and 9th, because it was still junior high school then. And then sometime after we graduated, they went to the middle school model. So they brought the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades there, moved the 9th over to the high school.
And did you graduate from Pattonville High School?
Yes, I did.
What year did you graduate?
1976. Can't forget it because we had the red, white, and blue bicentennial yearbooks.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And you say you have brothers or sisters?
I have 2 older sisters. I have one sister that's 7 years older, one that's 5 years older. The older sister lives in Indianapolis now. The younger one lives in Kansas City. So we kid ourselves as being the I-70 connection.
Did they also go to the same schools you did?
Yes, I did. And both are Pattonville graduates also.
I see. Now tell me a little bit of something. When you were at Carrollton School and when you were in Pattonville Junior and Senior High School, were you involved in any extracurricular activities or sports?
Just briefly went out for wrestling, never got anywhere. We had so many kids in our class, the competition for starting positions in a lot of the athletic teams, unless you were a top athlete, you didn't have much chance. So I didn't stick with that, but I did get involved with the Youth Association for Retarded Citizens, did a little time in chess club, but nothing I really that I stuck with the whole time. Probably YARC, the Youth Association for Retarded Citizens, probably the one I was in the longest.
And what drew you to that? What interested you for that?
A certain young lady.
Oh, someone was involved in it that...
A couple of close friends were involved with it. A couple of young ladies who I had eyes for were in there. So.
tell me, I never really heard of anything about this organization. Did they meet here in Bridgeton, or where?
They were part of Pattonville. What we did is we actually went out and spent time at the St. Louis State School and Hospital out on Bellefontaine Road. I think it's called the St. Louis Rehabilitation Hospital now, but working with people with disabilities, mainly people with some learning disabilities, mental retardation.
And you did this while you were in high school?
Yeah, we did that on the weekends, and ironically later on I did my internship, because my degree's in psychology. I did my internship out there, so got to go back and revisit some haunts.
How about that? Now, was this community center here while you were growing up?
No, it wasn't. Gentry Park was, and it was a county park at that time. And I do remember playing in it a few times, especially on our way walking up to Northwest Plaza. You could still do that back when you were a kid. But the park, and it wasn't very much here at the time. It was more woods than anything else. The community center was built, actually was in the process of being built when I went to work for the city of Bridgeton back in 1980.
Do you remember the community center being across the street where the credit union is?
I started there.
Oh, you.
When I started with the city, I started there.
Well, let's talk about that. When you graduated from high school, what did you do after graduation?
I went to the University of Missouri, Kansas City for a couple of years. I was working on a degree in chemistry, switched over to geology. My dad passed away in the meantime, so I came back to St. Louis, and I had no place I could go to finish my degree in geology. So I ended up working and getting a degree in psychology instead.
Where did you finish up?
University of Missouri, St. Louis, Humsel.
I also graduated from there. Yes. And did you have part-time jobs while you were growing up, while you were in high school, during this time you were finishing college? Did you work part-time?
My first job was when I was 16 years old, working at the old Chuck-a-Burger down on St. Charles Rock Road, across from Rittner High School. I only worked there 2 nights.
Well, can you tell us about that experience?
I got 65 cents an hour plus tips. I was a car hop, but the rules were that if you broke any of the old, they still use real china and stuff. You broke any of the glassware or dinner plates, you had to pay for those. If you lost the little number that you put under the windshield wipers, you had to pay for those. And I think the second car I waited on the first night I worked there took off down the rock road with the tray and everything along the side of his car. So at the end of the night, I was settling up with my boss by saying, "How much do I owe you?"
Oh no!
That was on a Friday night. I worked the Saturday night. Literally 2 nights and made next to nothing. And then I got a call that Sunday morning because they'd also put an application at the old Trio restaurant, which was on the Natural Bridge split just east of Holiday Hill over there.
I remember that.
Asked me if I still wanted a job, and go, boy, do I.
On a Sunday they called
Sunday morning, they had somebody didn't show up for work, and they fired him, and they said, "How soon can you be here?" I said, "Real quick." So I did that, and meanwhile, I was only working at Chuck-a-Burger on the weekend, so I had time to call them and say, "I'm sorry, I've taken some better position."
So you did you have your own car that you were able to drive from Carrollton down that far?
Yep, I had an old beat up Volkswagen. So that was my first car.
And what did you do at Trio?
I started out washing dishes, and then busboy, and then I worked my way up to fountain boy, working the graveyard shift. And my fondest memory there is I met Chuck Berry.
Oh my goodness!
About 3 in the morning.
Oh my!
Got done doing a gig, and they stopped in there to eat, and one of the waitresses said, "Don't you know who this guy is?" I go, "No." I honestly didn't have a clue. She introduced me, and it wasn't until years later I realized, boy, I missed out on a great honor, because here I met the guy, and I didn't know who he was.
Was he with other people?
He was with other members of his band and what have you, but they
Oh,
stopped
how
in there for a late
fun.
night. Yeah, and here I never realized how, I wasn't that much into music and didn't know that much about Chuck Berry back then, and only being 16, so, years later, I went, darn, I missed a golden opportunity.
Oh well. Now, was Holiday Hill there when you worked there?
Yeah, I still remember the days when schools did school picnics.
Yes.
And the 2 favorite places were either Holiday Hill or the old Chain of Rocks. I think it was Chain of Rocks Amusement Park.
That's it. Right.
And just vaguely remember those, because those were getting phased out by the time I remember more from my sister's school trips, because by the time I came along in elementary school about 5 years later, they were starting to phase some of that out.
Right.
But I remember going, my mom would volunteer to go, as I guess a kind of a chaperone for the class, and of course I got to go along too. So.
Well, tell me something. Where did your mom and dad work while you were growing up?
My dad worked like a lot of the fathers in our neighborhood. They all worked for McDonnell Douglas. They came out of the house at the same time every morning. They all sported the crew cut haircut, the heavy dark rim glasses, the little teeny skinny tie, and the white shirts. And they all left for McDonnell Douglas together. A lot of them carpooled together. And my mom worked part-time for Goldie's department store over in Hazelwood.
Oh, okay.
And she eventually went on to full-time and then back to part-time. I still remember all the fathers, because all the fathers would all get home about the same time too. We knew when the cars started pulling up, we all better get home and get ready for dinner. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's fun. Well, when you were growing up in Carrollton, was it a nice place that you could walk, ride your bikes, and go to each other's houses?
Oh, very safe. On Halloween, I feel so sorry for kids. They'll never know the fun we had as kids. We literally had a run. I mean, we would travel for miles on Halloween getting candy. Now you're afraid to let your kids out of your own neighborhood anywhere. And it's not just Bridgeton, but it's sad all over the country now where we're having to be more protective of kids as more things have come out. But I feel sorry for today's kids. They're never going to know some of the neat stuff we got to do as kids. But at the same time, it was real safe because there were more stay-at-home moms then. There truly was a village raised a kid. Every mom knew every kid in the street, and you got out of line. You not only had to worry about your parents, you had to worry about everybody's parents, because they would, if they wouldn't scold you, they would sure make sure your folks knew.
Right.
So it kept everybody in line. And you knew, and of course kids were more respectful back then towards their adults.
Oh yeah.
So you gave the same respect to Billy's mom as you did your own mom.
True. Yes, I agree.
So that it's a good time. When I watch shows like The Wonder Years, because that's based on about the same age. I would have been about the same age as the main character in this story. I see that and I can identify with it because it's true. That's kind of how Bridgeton was, especially Carrollton.
Did you play in any ball outside at school, like community sports?
I played baseball from the time I was like 4.5, 5 until I was like 17, and then played softball for another 13, 14 years. So I was a catcher most of that time.
So you were involved with sports, but not at the school?
No. Back then, the Bridgeton Athletic Association and the St. Lawrence Men's Club were basically one and the same. The Bridgeton Athletic Association, as we know it now, kind of split off the St. Lawrence Men's Club back, I guess, when the CYC came about. So it was a men's club. A lot of stuff in Carrollton centered around St. Lawrence, even if you weren't a parishioner there.
Were you?
No, we were. I always joke that I grew up, I was the only Protestant on our block, because it seemed like all my friends all went to St. Lawrence for school and everything else. But they were great. I mean, they took in and encompassed the whole community with their festivals and everything else. And everybody in the community was always welcome to anything that they had going on there. So, they ran all they were the earlier organizers of all the baseball and everything else that kind of went around in the city. So naturally, that's where I went to play ball, down the street. So went and signed up and played every year.
And you also, because this facility wasn't here yet, and the community center, which was in another location, not far from here, didn't have a swimming pool.
No. We grew up at the Carrollton pool.
Okay.
That was the only pool out here as far as we were concerned.
Was that a nice pool?
Oh, it was great. It was great. I actually have posted a clip up on the Facebook site for I Grew Up in Carrollton. Actually, a clip that my dad took it's only about a 46-second clip because movie film was kind of expensive back then, but showing the Carrollton pool back around 1960, and it's amazing. Those are my memories of it. When we were kids, we lived down there. It was always closed on Monday, but it opened like 12. I think it was 12:30, and we get up on a summer day. We all met down at St. Lawrence schoolyard 9 o'clock in the morning to play some Indian ball. We'd run home at about 11:30, grab some lunch, change into our suits, ride our bikes, get down to and wait for the pool to open. And then about 4:30, we all knew better start heading home because all those fathers were going to be getting home, and we better be there right when dinner was.
That's nice. It's nice that it sounds like you really had a nice growing up years and looking back on it. Can you tell me now about high school. Was there anything different about the high school that you recall? Was it, were the graduating classes big?
Ours was big. We had over 800 in our graduating class. Right behind us, the class of 77, 78, and 79, they all had over 1,000.
Whoa.
So when I was a senior there, we just had the 10th, 11th, 12th grades. We just had 3 grades, but we had well over 3,000 people there. And it wasn't as big as it is now. I mean, they've added on to it, with the Performing Arts Center and all the athletic facilities and everything. So it was a lot smaller building back then, and we had over 3,000 people in there one time. It was crazy in the hallways between classes. I go over there now, and they've got a radio station and the performance center. Now they got the library. They got all these athletic facilities. We didn't have any of that when we went there. They got a credit union and a store. I look at that and shake my head. And it has changed a lot since we went there.
Right. Well, tell us, you graduated in what year from Pattonville?
76.
76, and you said that was the bicentennial year.
Yep, that's correct.
I remember going to the Bridgeton parade for the first time in 1976, the first 4th of July parade. Were there 4th of July parades in Bridgeton before that? Do you know? Because you were growing up
I
here.
do remember some, because I remember I remember a contingent of us from the Bridgeton Athletic Association. We'd march in our uniforms and stuff. So I do remember parades, and best I can recall, they were maybe with the 4th of July. But back then, the 4th of July festivities were actually put on by the Merchants Association, and then they were actually shot by the volunteer fire department back then. On the site, kind of across from the Kingpin Bowling Alley, the old Carrollton Bowling Alley, they used to shoot them off in that site where now Adamo's restaurant and
The fireworks, you
the
mean?
fireworks were actually shot off there. We all sat over by the bowling alley to watch them.
I see.
And it was a volunteer fire department. I still remember the volunteer fire department because we had one of the horns up the street from us on DuPage up by St. Lawrence that would go off, when there was a fire, calling all the volunteers to get up to the firehouse.
I see. Now, when did, so you said you worked for the Trio restaurant part-time while you were getting your degree, and you went to the University of Missouri here in St. Louis then.
Well, I worked for the Trio and Chuckenberger back when I was like 16. I also did a stint with Venture Store up in Florissant, and up until about the time I graduated from high school. And then when I went away to college, I worked for the university briefly, and I also worked for Venture up in Kansas City.
I see.
So,
Well, when you graduated from the university, what happened then?
I was actually already working for the city of Bridgeton at the time, part-time. I had started out the previous year working out at the sports complex. Then in fall of 80, Kurt Klaus, who was the rec supervisor at the time, asked me, he said, we're done with BMAC, but if you still want to work, I'd love to have you come up and work at the community centers at Rec Aid. And I said, sure. So in September that year, I came up there. Well, I worked as a Rec Aid until the following June when Kurt left to become the director of St. Anne. And so they had the open position at the time, and I really wasn't serious about it. I was just about finishing my degree in psychology, and a couple of the full-time staff said, you really ought to apply. You've been working with Kurt, you know this stuff. Why don't you apply? So I did at the very last moment, the very last night when the resumes were due. I threw my hat in the ring. I figured I had nothing to lose. And lo and behold, they hired me.
And what was the position?
Recreation supervisor.
Is that the position you still hold?
No, I'm now the assistant director of Parks and Recreation.
I see. So how long did you have that position of, what is it now?
Recreation supervisor, roughly about 12 years.
So as recreation supervisor, were you in charge of the day camp programs?
At one time or another, I've done just about everything here. I ran the pools briefly, as we had 2 rec supervisors at that position at the time. One was in charge of the pools, the other one was in charge of the sports complex, and day camp kind of fell on whoever had the most time in and the skill set or whatever. So as staff turned over during different times, I took the helm and ran the pools.
Was this during the 1980s, would you say?
Oh, 80s and early 90s. Yeah.
Because my children went to the Bridgeton Day Camp from the time my son was a tiny tot till practically, I think, 12, when he really was too old.
I think I had the day camp under me for about 3 or 4 years, but I couldn't tell you exactly what years.
It was a wonderful program. At that time, we had buses that picked up the children through our subdivision, which was wonderful.
Yeah, I had it during the years we had the bus program. Just after the time, we also used to have a bus program just for picking kids up and bringing them to our pool. We had that for many years to help get kids up to the pool. But that program kind of went by the wayside too, with usership kind of dropped off. But we had the bus program for the day camp program, and it was kind of nice. It actually served a couple purposes. It helped get the kids to camp, but it also kind of served as before and after care, because the kids would be on the bus for anywhere from a half an hour to an hour, so it kind of helped parents out that way too.
And then also, were you in charge of organizing the different ball leagues? Because I know my son also played soccer, I think, through BAA.
Yeah, BAA has always worked with the city basically as a parent-run organization, but we've always cooperated with them and provided the facilities. They provided the volunteers to coach the teams and administer the program. So, most of my connection with them was either training coaches through the National Youth Sport Coaches Association, which I belong to, or just providing fields and opportunities for them. So.
Did you ever work as a coach or umpire, referee, or any of those?
I coached Little League baseball and softball for about 17 years. I started coaching before I had kids. When I first started with the city in 1980, I wanted to get to know the BAA better and the CYC a little bit better. Since I was working with them, those organizations at the sports complex, which I was running at the time. So I volunteered to coach. I was single at the time, didn't have kids. I enjoyed playing baseball the years I did. I thought I could impart some knowledge to the kids. And so I coached for about 3 years, and then the last year that I coached was the year I got engaged, and I made my wife a promise that I would get off ball fields because I was not playing ball myself 3 nights a week, coaching a little league team, and umpiring adult softball 2 nights a week. So I literally lived on ball fields almost 7 days a week.
It sounds like so, but you have a good knowledge of what the fields need to look like, and I know now our Bridgeton athletic fields, what we call BMAC down there, what are the borders? Can you define the borders of that?
It's basically bordered by Ferguson Lane, Taussig Road, and Pruitt Farm Road. Those 3, and then on our northern border is the carport auto salvage yard. So unfortunately, it's not our prettiest neighbor, but
it's a mixed bag down there.
But they got a nice big fence for us. So.
And close to the river, has that area ever been in jeopardy of flooding?
In flood of '93, we had water all the way up, about halfway up the north side of the sports complex. The original 6 fields that were built in 1970. They're levee protected, but the north side at the time had no levee protection, so that the water actually came up halfway up, and 2 out of 4 practice fields we had out there actually went underwater.
Wow! And
roughly in the same location where we now have a very large, lovely concession stand.
How long did it take before those fields were usable?
It was only up there for a couple of weeks. We were playing within a couple of weeks.
Did they ever flood now?
No, they really don't.
Because that one street does get flooded in this spring.
Yeah, Pruitt Farm Road goes under, but our levee system, and part of the problem we had back in '93, we had some flood flaps. We actually have some tubes that go under the levee there to allow us to let water out if we have to, because our fields will hold water real well being down the bottom. So the flood flaps, we had some damage to a couple of them, and that created some of our problems in '93. We've since fixed those and improved the levees down there. Now the northern section of the park is governed by levees, so haven't had real problems since then.
Well, let's get back to you. Personally, you said you met your wife, so tell us a little bit about that.
My wife also was raised. She was born actually in Michigan, I believe, and then they lived for a short time down in Florida. Her father was an engineer, and then he came to St. Louis to join McDonnell Douglas as an engineer. So they moved here. They lived in Carrollton Oaks They originally lived on Homeford and then lived there for a couple years, and then moved around the corner to Haldane, which ran right alongside Carrollton Oaks Elementary School. She had
Did you know her?
No.
Then?
No, she was one of those Carrollton Oaks people. There was always still a little division between Carrollton Oaks and Carrollton there. There was always some good-natured competition. Oh, you're from Carrollton Oaks. You're from Carrollton. But didn't know her growing up. Actually met her through her sister. Her older sister is actually my age, and met her through her older sister. And didn't even realize I didn't even know she was alive until I went to go away from college, and then I found out that she had a crush on me, and so we started dating. And
what is her name?
her name's Connie. Her maiden name was Turnage. So we ended up getting married and having kids, and decided to stay right here in Bridgeton.
Well, let's talk about Connie. Where did she go to school?
She went to school at Carrollton Oaks, and also Holman, and then up to the senior high. So she's another Panville grad.
And then she went on to school where?
She didn't right away. She was actually going to school, taking classes at UMSL. She had gotten a job with Bonafide Oil Company while it was one of those co-op programs from Pattonville.
Right. Mm-hmm.
She was working for Bonafide Oil Company, owned by Gene Barth, the former St. Louis football official. And she was working for him. As we were getting ready to get married, thought she needed to step out to something else, and had applied to McDonnell Douglas at the time. Got hired by McDonnell Douglas and was working for them, and Bonafide came back and said, no, we'd really like to have you come back, and made her an offer she couldn't refuse, and she went back to work for them. They came under a little bit of investigation for some alleged acts, and she felt best to leave the company, went back to work for McDonnell Douglas, and she's been there ever since. And of course now it's Boeing. So.
Okay. Where did you get married?
We actually got married in it's now the city of St. Louis owns it, but in the church right next to City Hall there. It used to be a Disciples of Christ Christian church. And
on Natural Bridge?
On Natural Bridge. And we were married in that building.
Is it still there now, the building right now?
Right.
What was the name of the church?
It was Disciples of Christ Christian Church. And
the one right by the old City Hall?
Right next to the old City Hall.
Okay, I want to make sure I know exactly.
Yeah, it was after the church left, they became, for a while, it was Good Shepherd Lutheran Church.
That's why I'm confused. That's how I knew it.
Yeah, I was there. The congregation never got big enough to afford a full-time minister. They were getting part-time ministers from the National Benevolence Association. We left after the gentleman who married us. We were very close to him and his family. Part of the congregation felt we needed a new minister. So when he left, we went and sought a new church.
Do you go to church here in Bridgeton?
Actually, no. We go to First Christian Church of Florissant, up in Florissant.
But you have remained. Did you live in Bridgeton when you first got married?
Yes.
And where was that?
We lived in Brittany Acres for about a year.
And Brittany Acres is apartments or?
Apartments.
Apartments, and they're off of Natural Bridge?
Off of Natural Bridge.
Close to the old City Hall?
Right, down the street, yeah.
Okay.
Then from there, we lived there about a year. Then we moved over to the Carrollton townhouses over there behind Schnook, the original Schnook's, the Carrollton Shopping Center. We lived there for a couple of years, and then we bought our first house down on Benedetta in the St. Gerard Park subdivision, and lived there for about 10 years, and then we sold, and now we live in Harmon Estates off Old St. Charles.
Now, when you moved to Harmon Estates, was it because you just liked that area, or did you have to move due to any of the airport buyout? Or did you know the airport buyout was going to happen?
We needed room.
So
we had run out of space.
For your case, it was just getting a bigger house. Yeah. And did you consciously make the effort to stay in Bridgeton, or did you just like Harmon Estates?
We wanted to stay in Bridgeton. I mean, for both of us, in terms of commuting to our jobs, it was close. My wife, working just off of McDonald Boulevard and Lambert. It was close for her, working at the community center. I'm only 2 miles away from work. We liked that. Plus, our kids at that point, my daughter was in high school, my son was in middle school. We didn't want to disrupt them, so by staying close, they were able to stay in the schools they were at with their friends. Also, our parents were both here in Bridgeton, and being the only child that's still living close to mom and kind of watching out for my mom, I wanted to stay close to her. Now, my wife's parents ended up getting bought out by the airport with the expansion. They moved over to St. Charles, but my two sister-in-laws are out there, so they could help out with my in-laws when they need help.
And what about your folks?
Well, my dad passed away a long time ago, but my mom's still lives here in Bridgeton. She's in Anna House, a skilled nursing facility on the campus at DePaul Hospital.
Now that's relatively new, isn't it?
No, see, it's been there quite a long time, because my mom actually volunteered there years ago.
Really?
After she retired, and ironically now she's a resident there. So
I did not realize it was there that long.
yeah, it's actually been there a long time. It was one of the first out. They added the Naomi House and the Veronica House later on. They're the two that are actually off, not directly connected to the hospital, but the Anna House is still connected to the hospital by a back hallway.
I see. So for you, the decision to stay in Bridgeton was a convenient location?
Convenient location, and plus I love this town. I was born and raised here, and it means a lot to me. I've told many people in the past that I probably wouldn't have stayed in Parks and Recreation if I wasn't working here. It meant more to work in the field here because I know the people. I've known the people. They're either my friends' kids, their parents. Now I'm even seeing some of my friends' grandchildren. That hurts a little bit more each year.
Yes.
But it's people you know their values. It's a good town. It's good people.
That we're glad to hear that.
Yeah, it'd be tough and I know at some point we may down the road may have to leave Bridgeton because there's a good chance we may be the caretakers for my in-laws someday out in St. Charles County. But it would be tough to go out there, I think, because a little more diverse out there. I don't know that you can make the connections like I made here.
Well, tell me now, you said you have children. Let's talk about them.
My oldest one, Erica Marie, is 28.
Wow.
A valedictorian from Pattonville, class of 2001. She went and got her has undergraduate degrees in Spanish and in linguistics, and then has her master's in teaching. Taught high school Spanish for 3 years and said, "This isn't for me." So now she's back in nursing school, and will graduate next month. And in June we'll get married
Okay.
for the first time. So.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you also have
My youngest one, Daniel, Corey Campbell, goes by Corey. Corey tried a couple years down at Rowlett and wanted to be an engineer like Grandpa. After a couple years said, "No, I really don't." He works for McKesson Pharmaceutical right now. He's also a professional disc golfer.
a professional
Professional. There's no money really involved with the sport from what I can tell.
disc
But disc
golfer.
golfer.
Now, how is that different from regular golfer?
You're using a disc similar to a frisbee,
Oh,
although they're quite a bit different. They're heavier, smaller, more compact.
are there locations here for that?
Ironically, there are quite a few in St. Louis, and we're actually working with the club that he's affiliated with to design and develop one possibly here in Bridgeton on the side of Carrollton. We inherited some land, got some land in a swap with the airport. So the city now has the acreage between Woodford Way and Gallatin, the wedge there. Behind Carrollton Apartments and the old Carrollton Shopping Center, and we've been looking for something to do with that land, and it's very compatible with disc golf. So we just got done signing a 2-year agreement with them to put a temporary disc golf course in there while we finish our master plan for that. And things work out that may be incorporated into our final master plan.
That sounds very interesting. Tell me now, you said your first job was tell me your first job again.
The first job at the city of Bridgeton was actually was actually crew chief down at the sports complex. I was in charge of one of the concession stands down there for the summer, and then I joined as a rec leader when we moved when I moved out in the fall to the community center. And it sounds like a really glorious position, but basically we took care of the community center at nights and on the weekends. Supervised the building, took class registrations, took facility reservations, did other work that the full-time staff needed us to do.
When was this present community center that we're in right now, when did it open?
Well, it was supposed to open in '80. There were some problems with the general contractor, so the city we didn't actually move in until '81. I was still part-time at that point. We moved in March of '81. Kurt then left in June of '81, and then in August of '81 I took over as the rec supervisor in his spot.
And how long did you maintain that position?
Roughly 10 or 12 years. After a while they all start to run together a little bit.
And then your position was after that?
Then I was a recreation superintendent. That position was eventually eliminated, and the assistant director position was created, and I was moved into that.
So what is your present position?
Assistant director of Parks and Recreation.
And who is the?
Wall Seams Clues assistant director.
So he is your
supervisor.
I see. And can you tell us now about just maybe a little bit about everyday workings and happenings here at the community center?
Well, the great thing about my job, there's no 2 days alike. That's what I like. If you like a lot of variety, recreation's a very good job because you never know what's going to happen from day to day. I can have a whole agenda of things I hope to get done or want to get done, and something can come up that it changes the entire thing. So I like it from that standpoint. It's challenging because it varies. And in our trade, we always laugh in the Parks and Recreation field that we have to be the most clever, resourceful people because we don't always have all the resources given to us to do some of the things we need to do and want to do. So we find ways to be able to get things done.
Can you tell us, for the future generations, just in case this facility might change in years to come, they may change it, what this facility is composed of, what all is here for people?
We have our indoor pool that was originally designed to be a competitive pool, 25-yard competitive pool. We have a full-size gymnasium, racquetball and handball courts. We converted. When we first opened, we didn't have fitness facilities because they really didn't. The original planners of the facility didn't really realize that weight rooms and cardio fitness was going to be the rage that it is now. So we didn't have those facilities when we first went in. As racquetball died out, we've taken over 2 of the courts and converted those into a fitness studio and a weight room. Meeting rooms, we have a game room with pool tables, ping pong. We've had other different games in there over the years, and I'm sure those will change as time goes on. My only advice to anybody in the future that if they're doing this is to get away from the flat roofs. A lot of the glass work that we had and the heat pumps we originally had, those were technologies, I guess, that were big. They thought were going to be big at the time, and really haven't. So the building's been a challenge over the years, and as it gets older, it's going to be more of a challenge to maintain. But we've been pretty much up to the challenge so far.
Is the building used, what should I say, up to capacity, or do you feel like the building is used a lot by the residents?
It's hard to always gauge that because when we first opened back in 1980, the city of Maryland Heights hadn't incorporated yet. City of St. Anne was just getting started with Kurt moving over there, so they didn't even have facilities yet. Hazelwood had a community center, an older facility. So we were really out here kind of by ourselves, and we attracted a lot of attention. So we had a lot of users coming in from other communities as well. Plus our population was a little bit healthier back then. We were at about 17,000 people. We're down to about 11 now thanks to the airport expansion. So we had a lot more people to draw on back then. And we were the only game in town. People came here for all their classes and programs and swim lessons because they weren't available in any of the other communities around here. Well, now as St. Anne's developed their facilities and their programs, Maryland Heights has developed their program, they've taken a little of the burden off of us. So our building's not as used as it used to be, but it's still used more than a lot of other community centers in St. Louis County. I've had the opportunity to drive around a lot of my peers' facilities by day, and you pull in their parking lots, and you can throw a rock from one end to the other without hitting a car. And you still come out here every day, and because of our large senior program and the senior dining center and all, we have a lot of people in here every day.
I'm here pretty often, and I see people that come in here, and I know on weekends they use the meeting rooms to host showers. So are the rental for the meeting rooms pretty lucrative or pretty good?
They help cover the expenses around here, but the last couple of years with the recession, rentals been down. I mean, people, that's kind of a luxury for people, during tight times. We're starting to see more rentals coming back this year. When we first opened, we would see rentals, we'd see all three or meeting rooms rented, literally every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That much. But again, a lot of that was from outside the area too. Now we're still very busy on Saturdays. Sundays have gotten a little busier, and even Fridays we're starting to see some more rentals there. But one of the things that kind of hurt us on Sundays is that there's been some changes in the liquor laws. We can't allow renters to have liquor, so that has kind of hurt us.
I see. Joe Turner and myself are members of the Bridgeton Historical Commission, and I've been a tour guide at the Payne Gentry House, which is on this property, for many years. And now, since your job, is it also connected to oversee the Payne Gentry House? Can you tell us a little bit about your connection with the historic Payne Gentry House?
My connection is mainly, I'm kind of one of the staff liaisons to the Historical Commission, so I'm there to help them to do their bidding. Yeah, I've overseen some of the construction and maintenance jobs over there. But our Park Operations Division really works probably even closer. They're the ones who do all the seasonal maintenance on the facility and the upkeep. I give them all the credit. They work quite a bit out there, doing roof repairs and rebuilding, portions. It's like the doctor's office entrance last year, the well housing. Craig Dew, one of our foremen, who's one of our chief carpenters, is really responsible for a lot of those.
Well, let me ask you your opinion, because you said you know of and have seen other cities' community centers. Do you feel like having a historical house on this property, do you feel like it's an asset to the community in any way?
It's, always having the history of the communities documented is always important. I hate to lose any of that. The question is, are today's people, what does it take to get, the people living in the town today to show interest and come up and see to see the Payne Gentry House? And I know we've had that discussion before. How do we get more people to come up so that we can, impart all this, all this history that we've archived and everything up there? And that's a little tougher. You're facing all the same competition for time and attention that we do in recreation every day. You're facing, if you're trying to educate kids about it, well, you got to wrestle them away from the Nintendo and the internet. Older adult, other adults, young adults are going to tell you, well, we're too busy working and everything else to come. So, unless you have people that especially, have an interest or a pull to that, it's going to be hard to get them in, I think, at times.
We just have just a little bit of time left. Do you want to tell us anything, memories you have about Bridgeton that you would just, like to share with anyone?
There's a lot of memories. It was just a great place as a kid to grow up, and I don't regret anything we did as kids. We just had a blast growing up in this town. I was just watching it change. I think probably I got some sad memories because now with the airport expansion, the airport when they expanded, it was like taking my childhood and running her in a racer across it. They successfully took out my childhood home, my wife's childhood home, took out the church where I was baptized, took out the church, literally took out the church that I got married in. It just erased a lot of memories, and it affected my children too, because they remember both their grandmas, and the houses they had in Bridgeton and being raised in there. So it's even affected their memories, and that's a shame. But that's the great thing. We have the memories at least. Some people are never going to know what it was like to grow up in Bridgeton. And it was a great place and a great time.
Well, we're really thank you for your time today, and we're glad to have you at the community center. Joe and I both use it whenever possible. I know
And we appreciate that.
Joe just took advantage of the trivia night you just hosted, and I've brought my grandchildren up here for numerous events that have been a lot of fun. So we hope the community center keeps thriving.
I'm not worried about the community center. I think we're going to be here for a while to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.